A dream to some.
A nightmare to others!
But I will give you a message. A message of death!
Come on,
Make no attempt to capture them. They must be exterminated.
Matron, take them away! Stardust speaks to you.
He's feeding on you, the nasty, vicious thing. I confess that I've never seen a homicidal before. Sex-starved, yes. Alcoholic often. But killers, very rare. You may consider yourself privileged.
Hello and welcome to part 3 of our jolly day out at the Leeds Horror Film Festival. One essential item to bring along to the festival was a nice comfy cushion to rest our backsides on, and there was even a prize for the best cushion. Friend of the show and film festival regular Cheryl won this competition with her fantastic Necronomicushion, which we all ended up signing during the festival.
Yeah, so did I. Someone's just drawn a pair of tits.
And then from there, it was time for the third film of the day. From Beyond the Grave is a 1974 British anthology horror film from Amicus Productions. Directed by Kevin Connor, produced by Milton Subotsky, and based on short stories by Ronald Shetwin Hayes, who was a beloved author of ghost stories.
And this was the last of the Amicus anthologies. The other portmanteau films that preceded it were, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors in 1965, Torture Garden in 67, The House That Dripped Blood in 1970, Asylum in 1972, and the two films that were based on notorious American EC comics, Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, both of which were in 73. So like those aforementioned films, From Beyond the Grave is a collection of 4 different short horror stories that revolve around the same premise or situation.
And in this case, each of the 4 stories here are about 4 different customers who all attempt to either buy, rip off or steal items from Temptations Limited, an old antique shop found on a quiet side street whose motto is offers you cannot resist. And we, the audience, just know right from the start that something mysterious is going on within this little store.
After finding themselves drawn to a particular object within the shop and then acquiring it through somewhat shady means, a curse is activated as payment for trying to cheat the elderly shopkeeper, who might not all be what he seems. And it's also a very, very rare opportunity to hear Peter Cushing attempt a Yorkshire accent.
And to be honest, it's not
that bad.
It's not that bad.
Shouldn't have done that.
So yes, it's another excuse for myself and Luke to talk about Amicus. Not that we need an excuse to do so.
No.
We originally talked about this in great length and in great detail when we were reviewing the Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies from the same studio, Doctor Who and the Daleks and Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. And it's also another chance to see a master like Peter Cushing in action. We're making a regular habit of this, aren't we?
We are, actually, yes.
Not only the 2 aforementioned Doctor Who films, but our previous episode where we did
Saw the
Sherwood Forest, where he was the Sheriff of Nottingham. And indeed, from Doctor Who to the Sheriff of Nottingham, from Baron Frankenstein to Van Helsing, from Sherlock Holmes to Grand Moff Tarkin, Peter Cushing really has done it all.
Cushing as the shopkeeper creeps around in the shadows and behind the displays of the vast amount of goods that he has in his shop, watching what his potential customers are up to, who they have no idea that they are being observed from the moment that they step through the front door. He usually has something sinister to say or has a malevolent twinkle in his eye when something nasty is about to happen soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I hope you enjoy snuffing it.
Like a lot of the earlier anthologies from Amicus, From Beyond the Grave features quite the cast of character actors, including the likes of Diana Dawes, David Warner, Donald Pleasant and his daughter Angela, who all put in a fantastic performance in their respective stories. Angela Pleasance was particularly memorable, as she's clearly inherited from her dear old dad how to appear friendly and unassuming in one moment and then become very creepy and unsettling the next. I suppose the main question is, Luke,
Yes?
was Donald Pleasant more creepy in this or in The Spirit of Dark and Lonely Water?
Dark and Lonely Water.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. Don't need to think about that. And now we move on.
You don't need to go into your special place, do you?
No. There's nothing in the water. There's nothing in the water. The water is safe. There's nothing in the water. Okay. Thanks for reminding me about that one.
Would you like to buy some shoelaces?
We will give you a brief run through of each story, but we'll try not to give too much away of the ending for these. So, in the first story, we have Edward Charlton, played by the late great David Warner. He manages to cheat the old shopkeeper into paying much less for an antique mirror by claiming that it's a forgery. Afterwards, something is unleashed from within this mirror that is not of this world, and that he is powerless to disobey, turning his middle-class life into a bloody living nightmare.
I mean, it's probably not a wise idea to be holding a séance with your mates in the same room as a creepy-looking antique mirror that you've just recently acquired in dodgy circumstances. I mean, just saying. It certainly must have made for a rather creepy experience even shooting that scene, as during an interview for the BBC television series Mark Gatiss' History of Horror, which is fantastic and well worth a watch, Warner, perhaps feeling a little nervous about the possibility of unleashing something for real, insisted that during the filming of the seance scene that he and the rest of the actors would not actually be touching hands, they would only pretend to do so.
Do as I tell you, and soon it will all be finished.
It's a solid way to open the proceedings of the film, as Charlton grows more and more deranged as he continues to feed the ghostly apparition in his mirror, and it becomes more difficult to hide the evidence of his crimes. It's neatly matched by the second story, where a former soldier turned businessman, Christopher Lowe, played by Ian Bannon, has a miserable home life with a wife who can't stand him, played wonderfully by Diana Dawes, and a teenage son who barely acknowledges him.
One day, Christopher decides to spontaneously buy shoelaces from a shabby street peddler called Jim Underwood, played by Donald Pleasance, who also used to be a soldier in the military. Seeing an opportunity to befriend the old war veteran, Christopher steals a service medal from the antique shop.
Soon after, the two men have struck up a friendship and are enjoying tea and cake in each other's company, and he really starts to enjoy the company of Jim's daughter as well. But in doing so, the businessman begins to resent his life at home even more, and when an opportunity arises to remove his wife from the picture entirely, a scheme that just so happens to involve witchcraft, the man finds himself becoming the unwitting participant of a greater plot than he realises.
In the third story, Reggie Warren, played by Ian Carmichael, sneakily swaps the price tags on two different snuff boxes to give himself a little bit of a deal.
The rotter.
And even then, the cheeky bugger still haggles over the price.
That'll cost you £5, sir. Should we say 4? Oh, you do strike a hard bargain. Oh, well, things being what they are.
On the train ride home, a very strange woman called Madame Orloff, played by Margaret Leighton in a wonderfully over-the-top performance,
fabulous,
declares that she is a psychic and that she can see that the man has a elemental demon on his shoulder that only children, animals and psychics like herself can detect. She hands the man her business card, claiming that he will require her services very soon.
Oh, it's no good trying to rub him off. Not in a lifetime will you rub him off.
At first, he is keen to disregard the woman's declaration of utter superstitious nonsense, but then odd things start to happen rather quickly. His dog is now terrified of him, and it runs away. His wife accuses him of attacking her despite being nowhere near her. At one point, she finds herself being throttled by an invisible force whilst they're in bed together. Soon after, Madame Orloff is called upon to have her stage a wonderfully over-the-top exorcism, complete with furniture flying around the room and the fireplace exploding.
Strain hard. Fat, foul fiend, you know damn well you don't live here, your place is hell. Snarling, crawling, spitting Tom, growling, snarling, harder, harder, get thee gone! Rouse him!
And although this does seem successful at first, it turns out that the nightmare has only just begun. The demon does indeed move on, just on to somebody else.
And finally, the last client of the day wants to purchase an ornately decorative door, but doesn't have quite enough to pay for it. The shopkeeper agrees to knock a little off the price tag, but whilst going into the back of the shop to write up a receipt, he leaves the till drawer open, tempting the man to steal from it. Now, we do not see this happen at this point, and this does raise the question, at first, of whether or not he deserves the karmic retribution he does seem to get. Back home, having fitted the door, it is revealed that sometimes when it is opened, it leads into an old-fashioned room, all painted in blue.
Now, of course, they do that stupid thing that all people do in a horror film, which is stay in the house and not immediately get out. Or just, simply take the door back off its hinges and burn the bloody thing in the back garden. In fact, our hero in this story keeps on going into the blue room.
Why don't white people just leave the house when there's a ghost in the house? Y'all stay in the house too fucking long. Get the fuck out of the house.
This turns out to be the study of a warlock named Sir Michael Sinclair, who for many decades cursed the door to trap innocents so that he might devour their souls and return to the world of the living. It's now a race against time for the unfortunate customer to escape from the door and save the souls of himself and his loved one.
And in the last scenes of the film, one particular dodgy gentleman, having been hanging around outside the shop throughout much of the film, decides to finally enter and attempt an armed robbery from the owner, only to find out that there is more to this shopkeeper than what he lets on.
Oh dear. The love of money is the root of all evil.
And as he turns to face us, the audience, at the end, to beckon us into his shop, it seems that we are the next to be tempted.
Hi, customers, come in. Come in. I'm sure I have the very thing to tempt you. Lots of bargains, all tastes catered for. Oh, and a big novelty surprise goes with every purchase. Do come in, anytime. I'm always open.
Here we go.
Here we go. Yes,
Right.
We're back again, aren't we?
We're back again, so we've
We're
just...
outside a little bit, so this is nice. Change the scene.
Nice and sunny, a bit tropical in the background. I like that.
Nice, actually, yeah.
But we are still in Leeds, believe it or not.
Yes.
For the Leeds Horror Film Festival, and we have just finished watching From Beyond the Grave, which gives us the excuse to talk about Amicus again.
As if we ever needed an excuse to do that. So we'll do a little bit more about this, but this was the last of the Amicus portmanteau horror films.
You would never have any idea that this would be the last one, because it's still a fantastic movie. It's probably one of the best of the portmanteaus. You've got an all-star cast. You've got David Warner, you've got Donald Pleasant. Donald Pleasant's daughter Angela, who is the spitting image of a father, let's be honest with you.
Who else was in there? Ian Ogilvy was in there, Ian Bannon was in there, Carmichael was in there, and all sort of framed by a wonderful sort of story involving the great one himself, Peter Cushing.
In fine form and with a Yorkshire accent.
Very good though. It was very
Naughty.
Good. It was a very good Yorkshire accent.
Shouldn't have done that.
Very good.
Flat cap and pipe. By comparison, when you saw what Hammer was like during the 70s, they pretty much squeezed every single last drop out of sort of 19th century Gothic that they could. And they tried...
And softcore lesbianism.
Well, that as well. And they tried to squeeze... Well, they tried to sort of revisit past successes without much success. With Dracula 1972 AD, we had Dracula.
Not that actually, it's
Well,
not that bad.
It's Dracula.
It's not that bad.
It's Dracula visiting, swinging London when most of the swinging had already finished.
Yeah. There was no swinging in London in the early 70s.
And there was Kung Fu Kicking Vampires when Hammer teamed up with Shaw Brothers for Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
You are not dissing Legend of the
Oh, I'm not.
You are not dissing Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
I'm not. In fact, if
Not in my
anything,
presence.
I think the idea of that sounds fantastic. And if I may, I would like to say that maybe we do that as a future episode.
I want to do that as a future episode.
Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
Can we also do the film Shatter as well?
I don't see any reason why not.
Excellent, very good.
Now, despite the fact that myself and Luke quite like the idea of Dracula in swinging London, or indeed Kung Fu Kicking Vampires, it unfortunately didn't capture the attention of the audience, and unfortunately Hammer did sort of come to a bit of a creaking, wheezing early grave, unfortunately.
Yeah, the last of the great Hammer horror films is To the Devil a Daughter.
Yeah.
Which is about 76, 77-ish.
So it was a bit of a sad end for Hammer. However, with Amicus,
they went on.
They carried on going, and you would have no idea that from looking at From Beyond the Grave that this would be coming to the end. But if this is the way that the curtain closed on the portmanteau Amicus films, then they closed the curtain in style.
Yes, they do. Right. So next.
Yes.
What are we doing next?
Next up, we have the mystery film, and we have a showcase of short films as well.
Which I think is what we've got next. We've got the showcase of short films next, and then we go on to sort of the premiere, which we will talk about in a little while, and then we'll try and remember as much as we can of the short film showcase, because bearing in mind we've had a few pints.
We've had a few by that point, yes. So join us in part 4, I think. Yes, for a little bit of this.
Please, don't make me do it again, please.